Once you've ruled out the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be true.
And it is not a question of a little occultism or a touch of mysticism, Mr. Benton. It is vampires, with a host of damned souls at telepaths.
I am thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night.
Here, the old gods aren't dead.
And what of the true god?
He's dead. He can't complain.
People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
You're listening to Paranormal UK Radio.
Hi everybody, this is Irene Allen, the host of the Paranormal UK Radio show, the flagship show of the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And again, I'm with, what's his name?
Say it!
Oh,
Say it! Say my name.
Sorry. So sorry.
Say my name.
Yeah, I know. This is the Ring's fault.
And I'm not Heisenberg, by the way.
I told you, Mark, right? I actually said that all in one go without having to do any retakes. And as soon as it got to your name, I forgot it. After, how long have we known each other now? How long have we been doing radio together?
It's been several years, and you still forget my name.
Yeah, well, I can get away with that. I call it an age thing with me. There's
a lot of things I can call an age thing with me, too.
Yeah, but we won't go there, will we?
Yeah, no.
Right, so what's happening?
What's happening? Well, not a whole lot at the moment.
No.
Let's put it this way, not a whole lot I can talk about.
Yeah.
Because this isn't that kind of show.
Oh, okay. No, well, the weather's nice over here, I got to admit that. It's going to rain tonight. That's about it. The country's opening up. People are getting out now for their beers in the beer gardens on lovely sunny days. And the shops have opened. So I can go out and buy shoes, do whatever I want now. Freedom.
Well, our CDC just announced that we can go outside without masks as long as we, pretty much stay away from everybody.
Hold on a minute. Yeah, we were wearing masks anywhere there was crowds of people, like in shops or supermarkets. But walking along the street, no, we weren't wearing masks. You had to wear masks to walk along the road? Did you?
We have to wear... Well, I don't know, to be honest with you. Some people did. I never did because it's stupid. If you're out in the fresh air by yourself, you don't need to. But, everybody gets so much different information over here that you get the scared people. I've seen people out jogging wearing masks. It's like, are you serious?
Yeah.
But
I've seen people driving cars on their own wearing masks.
Yeah, no, we have our president on a Zoom call with all other world leaders, and he's in a room by himself with a camera wearing a mask, and he's the only one there not wearing a mask. I mean, wearing a mask. It's like...
Yeah?
It's like, oh my God.
Oh, well.
Oh, good Lord. Like I said, no,
anyway.
I'm going to behave. Yeah? See, I think it's the ring. I'm going to blame the ring. I'm living vicariously through you now.
Yeah, okay, it's vibrating. The ring, I mean. Right.
It's all energy.
Oh, I'll tell you, it drives me crazy wearing this ring. It's your fault. You told me to put it on tonight. People, I've got the ring on, okay? The ring we always quite often talk about. The trouble ring. That gets me into all sorts of trouble and mischief. I'm wearing it tonight while I'm doing the show. Because Mark said, get it out. It's safe.
Because I feel that
happens.
With our guest tonight, I thought it might make things more interesting.
Okay. Right. And then who's that? Are you going to introduce our guest?
So we'll see if we're going to regret this or not real quick.
Don, don't hang up.
No. Stay with us, Don, okay?
I will stay with it. It takes a great deal to frighten me, especially when it's several thousand miles away.
Yeah, well, you haven't dealt with us yet, or Irene. But anyway, our guest tonight is an author of a brand new book that's coming out called Energy Magick of the Vampyre, Secret Techniques for Personal Power and Manifestation. He served as the high priest for the Temple of Set for 6 years. And
Temple of Set.
Temple of Set, and is recognized as I'm going to try this, Don. Let me see. An ipsissimus. Is that
very good?
Is that pretty close? Okay.
That's very close.
He's also written a lot of different articles and stories and several books, including on left-hand practice, path practice, and one book, Overthrowing the Old Gods. So, Don Webb, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Don, first of all, tell us what an ipsissimus is. I can't say it.
Like most occult groups, the Temple of Set has titles. We inherited titles from the general sort of occult stream that Aleister Crowley had, and then the Golden Dawn. The Golden Dawn had picked up the title ipsissimus because Nietzsche had begun using it in his own writing. It means my very own self. It's a level of initiation where I make the very bold claim that most of my thought, hopefully all of my thought and my emotions, arise from myself as opposed from outside influences. For a left-hand path thinker, it's the goal of initiation, and it took me only about 30 years of initiation to get there.
So this what you mean by self? You mean your higher self?
Well, I would say, yes. That's a loaded term, higher self, but yes, that self that is both timeless and not connected to this world. One's hopes for immortality, one might say.
Okay. And the word is again? How do you say it?
Ipsissimus. It's a Latin coinage. I think actually Thomas Aquinas was the first person who said it. You wouldn't have heard anyone in ancient Rome saying it.
Oh, ipsissimus. I'll get there in the end. I'm terrible with long words. I get tongue-tied. So we call it ippy. Ipsissimus.
Ipsissimus.
Okay.
Okay. Just trust us on this one, Irene, okay?
All right, then. If we have to use the word again, you say it, Mark.
Okay.
I
will also answer to hey you.
Hey you.
Yeah.
Oh, I like you already.
It's funny is I can already feel the ring causing some issues tonight. Because I don't know what it is. You're the one wearing it, and yet I'm the one feeling a little naughty.
Oh, well, you'll inherit it, so get used to it, mate. That's all I can say.
Oh, good Lord. So, Don, let's talk to us a little bit about what is the Temple of Set?
All right, the Temple of Set is a left-hand path organization. So let's start off with what the left-hand path is. There are two major methods of occultism in the Indo-European world. The right-hand path emphasizes devotion, purity, and ultimately becoming one with one's deity. Either, as a Christian would say, in the divine hypostasis of heaven, where you're looking at God all the time and you're basically thinking about God all the time. The left-hand path is the path of radical non-union. The practitioners of the left-hand path seek not to become one with the deity. They seek to become godlike in themselves, an independent entity that remains and influences the world long after the passing of the flesh. The left-hand path, the term originally came from India, the Vampyre, is known for being fearless in using substances that are impure, doing taboo practices, or otherwise going against the grain in order to establish the sovereignty of the self over one's cultural or social matrix. So the left-hand path in America is probably best represented by the Temple of Set, although we also have a fairly large international following in Australia, Northern Europe in particular.
Now, how would you differentiate this between, let's say, the Church of Satan? And I'm not talking about Satanism in devil worshiping, but the Anton LaVey style, or there's a gentleman, Eric Werner, who we've interviewed a few times. Eric Werner, who has written up several books and is a member of the Church of Satan. And a lot of what you're saying here seems to mirror what he has mentioned about, the Church of Satan and how they view the world and their philosophies.
Well, for one thing, the Temple of Set is a breakaway group from the Church of Satan. We left in 1975. However, the big difference between the two groups, the Church of Satan does not believe in immortality, in the sense of a spiritual immortality, and does not believe that there are any entities other than just people. If there are any gods, humans made them up. In Temple of Set, we do believe there is an entity whom we refer to as Set, using the ancient Egyptian name. That's just because that's the oldest name we have good access to, that also broke from the natural order. So that just as we seek to be independent, immortal beings, we would say that our patron, the god Set, is also an independent, immortal being. There are certain similarities between the Temple of Set and the Church of Satan, largely because we do have that common core belief in rejecting outward society as the number one controller of one's life. This does not mean that we're immoral or licentious. What it does mean is we look at the conventional bounds of society as something that mankind adopted to keep itself in shape. And we think maybe we need to keep our own selves in shape. And in both instances, you have organizations that enjoy diabolical imagery. The imagery of darkness is much more fruitful for the soul seeking independence than the imagery of light.
Okay.
Whoa.
Now there's a lot in there that fits in with other views of. I hate using a lot of these terms because they're so limiting, and people get certain, they jump to conclusions when they hear it. But when you're talking about other types of spiritualism or spiritual beliefs, to talk of, as Irene mentioned, the higher self, in a lot of New Age or spiritual philosophy, that higher self is our immortal self. And that is the part of the, for the creator source part of us that exists and has the different experiences. Like here we are, living a human existence right now, but this is just a small part of the overall eternal higher self, or, as for lack of a better term, of, our higher spiritual being.
Well, almost anyone that has any kind of practice in a large number of religious traditions, certainly long predating even, New Age thought, experiences things that clearly don't fit in with the world of 4 dimensions and 5 senses. We have things that of themselves show us and remind us largely through wonder and ecstasy that there is more to ourselves than meets the eye. The problem is, of course, as anyone in any kind of practice notices, most of humanity has almost no clue about this. Or if they do, they immediately ascribe it to whatever their own conventional, religious, or cultural view tells them about that. It is really hard to find someone that says, I'm going to accept for myself this phenomena that has occurred to me. I am not, however, going to immediately accept the first explanation someone offers to me. It's hard to have both a mixture of curiosity and skepticism, as well as a desire to seek wonder, ecstasy, and transcendence.
You know, actually what you're describing describes my take and philosophy perfectly, because I've been searching and doing my own research for many years now, and I keep my options open. I keep an open mind, because as I've grown, my thoughts of things I've learned and grown, and I've learned much more complex ideas and philosophies over the last few years than if you would have tried telling me some of these things 20 years ago. I would have said you were nuts. Now I'm starting to realize, hey, this might be a part of our existence. Like the idea of our reality, what we think of as a reality all around us is nothing more than an illusion. It's what we tell ourselves what reality is. Everything from our government and society and culture to spiritual beliefs, they're all, man-made.
I mean, the things that humans create can resonate with truth. I mean, Plato would be very happy with that notion. But a lot of the things that humans create, they create to limit themselves so that they fit together really well. We have a lot of people on this planet. There's 8 billion people. And we have to have in each and every culture some way for people to police themselves. Because otherwise you would have 8 million people with a lot of, strangely passing ideas. Most people can't step away from that. And that's a good thing, because we don't want them to step away from that. They may have the intelligence, but not the wisdom. They may have the wisdom and not the intelligence. They may have an inadequate desire to be seeking after important truths. So you always want to keep the number of initiates small, but keep the society as free as possible otherwise.
Well, with your book, Energy Magick of the Vampyre, and I will say again, and we'll repeat this at the end of the program, this book is not yet out yet. It's coming out June 1st. Now, in the synopsis, it mentions that this is an initiatory guide. And, it talks about you sharing a 9-month process to awaken and initiate you as a vampire and allow you to actualize your hidden potential. Can you go into a little bit more detail about what that means?
Okay, I'll talk about a couple of things there. One, the first part of the book just gives a few basic vampiric magical practices. And you should try these. You could say, wow, I really like the result, or I seem to have some talent with that, if you decide you like it. Because it's always going to be based on the user, not on even someone as august as myself telling them, but the individual. Then I gave a 9-month meditation of certain magical practices, certain philosophical questions to ask oneself, to make a permanent change, making people aware of the vampiric essence, how to use it, how to be informed of it, and maybe even how to inform others of it if that should be their choice. So there is a 9-month initiation. Then I have 2 more sections in the book. I have one section that I've decided to go into something that is never talked about in occult books. What happens years later? You know, in every occult book, if you go into your occult bookstore or your occult section of Amazon or whatever, there's any number of books for beginners. You know, your first sampler of the runes or the I Ching or how to do spirit phenomena, whatever you're looking for. There's never something that says, hey, you've been doing this for 20, 30 years. What should your life be like? So my third part of my book, I deal with being an adult, being a mature, functioning citizen that has darker occult practices. And the last part of the book, I gave people a lot of resources. I mean, I'm someone who's been a practitioner for just in the Temple of Set for 32 years. That means I've covered a lot of ground. Now, there's a lot of ground to cover. There's things to read, stuff to try, places to visit. But what I've done is I've tried to give you 32 years in a kind of condensed form. So hopefully that's a kickstart for other people's initiation.
Very interesting. Now, it's something I probably we should have addressed right up front, because I know some of our listeners will probably be asking this, but you know, you're using the term vampire, and right away people automatically think of Hollywood, Bram Stoker, or Twilight. Oh, God help us.
House of Horrors. House of Horrors in my case.
You know, blood-sucking, you know, immortal, you know, dead, you know, the dead, you know, sucking the blood and turning other people into vampires. But that's not what this is about. So,
well, yeah, first, I'm glad that you went there really early on. No, it's not about blood drinking in any way, or sleeping in a coffin, or being particularly afraid someone is going to stick a piece of wood through you.
What?
The vampire is a great metaphor for change. Let's think about that in some ways. The vampire draws energy from the outside world, from willing people who give it to him or her, or drawing it directly from their enemies, or from nature, or for the inspiration of art. The vampire becomes detached from the world. Think how detached someone is that lives for centuries and sleeps through every day. They're not worried about what's the latest stupid thing some world leader has said. But they are worried about long-term trends in the world. They may not be concerned about the economy of the next 5 years, but they may be concerned about the amount of pollution in the world over the next 100 years. The vampire is a master of attention. He or she can vanish, or they can totally command you with a gaze. Now, the vampire myth is not that old of a myth. Although in most societies there's some kind of malicious undead, the vampire myth is only a few hundred years old and largely shaped by Bram Stoker and Sheridan Le Fanu,
Stephen King
writers, right? Polidori.
So, I was going to say, sorry, Salem's Lot is still one of my favorite vampire books, so, yeah.
Well, you know, again, and this is the big thing, vampirism, with an I, because I spell it with a Y using Polidori spelling, is so driven by images because the images are so deeply seductive to the soul. They completely change everything. Even those people who played cinematic vampires, usually after they played that role, they can't play any other roles.
Oh,
I didn't know that.
Well, they're so drawn to it. Look at the life of Bela Lugosi. I mean, he did a lot of different movies and characters, but he was always brought back to being Dracula.
Nosferatu.
And even up to up to his death when he starred in Plan 9 from Outer Space, and he was still
like Christopher Lee, done more Dracula films than anything else, didn't he? Really?
Yeah, he did. But at least Christopher Lee, he had a lot of different other roles too, and but yeah, he did. He was Dracula for a long time.
As a tremendously powerful archetype, and even in bad form, such as Twilight, which is really awful, it's still there's this fascination. Like we could take Twilight. Everyone rejoiced a few years ago. Oh, it's a great young people's novel. Everyone's reading it. It's so wonderful in romance. Really? It's the story of a 180-year-old man who's dating a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
Pretty much. It's got to be the biggest pedophile novel ever. But
do you know, I never watched that.
Yeah, you trust me.
Don, I did not watch that.
You would lose some brain cells if you did.
Yeah, sadly so.
Yeah, but are there people out there that actually don't understand or don't know that they are drawing energy off of other people? That they are energy vampires?
Absolutely. And I talk about psychic vampirism because there are these people, and you know them in your lives, that when you're around them, man, you feel awful when they leave. However, they don't seem to get anything out of it. They don't go out and create art or things of beauty. They're not sexually attractive. They're not fascinating. They simply just make you feel like you're a pint down. Yeah. And that's because every human, you, I, everyone, draws in and puts out energy all the time.
That's right.
You're aware that every time you meet some new person, some people, because of their psychological damage, draw in too much energy but aren't using it for anything. These psychic vampires, if you can, avoid them. And if you can't, buy my book and I'll give you some magical techniques for not feeding them.
Okay, I'm going to buy this book anyway. Well, I really am.
Yeah, you know what? I have to say... I'm sorry, go ahead, Don.
Irene, you're going to buy it because you have an artifact that is possessed of vampiric energy. Someone put a lot of energy in the ring you have, and it still has a life of its own.
I know it. I know that.
It definitely has a personality.
Yeah. Whoever created this ring, they created it for a reason. It's very heavy ring. They created him for a reason. And I honestly believe that. I get visions when I'm wearing it. I see things.
Well,
there were a lot of...
No, go ahead, Don.
There were many cults in Europe, about the time that probably the ring came into being, like 200-300 years ago, that were reviving older pagan traditions. And of course, one of the best ways to communicate your connection to something like this is a good visual symbol. And if it's subtle, and a ring is a fairly subtle thing, you can connect your interests to other people that look upon it, but you don't have to go around and be totally like dressed in black and have a scowl and be a gothic teenager.
Well, I tell you what, no chance of me being a gothic teenager. Not now, anyway. But this ring does have a pull. It calls to me. It's been calling all day. I don't know whether it realizes. I talk about it as if it's a being, that like a dog or something like that. It calls to me. It's like it knew that I was going to do this show tonight. And then I said to Mark earlier, shut up. Then I said to Mark earlier on, I wish I'd got the ring out of the safe. He said, well, go and get it. So I did. And now I've been caressing it ever since you've been talking.
Like I said, one ring to rule them all. It's definitely the ring in the years that I've known Irene, and we've discussed the ring, and we've done a lot of research on it and written articles, and now we are looking at writing a book about it because so much continues to happen with the ring, and there's so many, it's such an enigma, so many mysteries surrounding it. But it definitely seems to have a spiritual type of attachment, an intelligence around it. Somebody could, a paranormal person might call it a haunted object, and I wouldn't call it a haunted per se, but definitely it has energy, and that energy is sentient enough or intelligent enough to manipulate the environment and people around it.
Can I tell you a story that happened last week? Or was it last week? Not last week, the week before, about this ring, Don.
Okay.
I decided for once I'd wear it to bed. I never wear it to bed, but I thought I'd wear it to bed one night to see what happened. So I'm lying in bed. I'm still awake, and I've got my eyes shut. Obviously, it's in the dark. The door is shut to the bedroom. And all of a sudden, I saw right beside me, I saw my front gates at the bottom of my drive. I've got double wrought iron gates at the bottom of my drive. And a man walked past the gates, but he didn't walk by the gates. He walked in the road past the gates. And I dived out of bed, opened up the curtains because I thought there was someone out there. I got back into bed, and within seconds, a cold wind, now the bedroom door is shut, a cold wind blew right across me towards the window. And but it didn't happen once, it happened twice. It shot right across me towards the window that I just looked out, down to my front gates.
Well, clearly the ring has a tremendous power of resonance, but then that needs someone who is correctly resonant with it. With the right resonance, anything can feed back energy, but it's made for a particular purpose, like a key to a very particular door. But it needs to find someone that also wants to open the door or needs to open the door.
Yeah. Well, I felt that the feeling I got from it was protection.
Good.
I felt like it was protecting me from whatever was outside the house. I'm a remote viewer, you see, so sometimes quite often I'll close my eyes or without actually doing remote viewing, I just close my eyes and I see scenes of things happening in the world or whatever. And whether I was having a psychic view of something passing that gate or someone passing that gate at some period of time, I don't know. But this thing, as soon as the wind shot across my bed, across me over the bed, towards the window, that felt like something was protecting me. And the only thing I can think of was the ring.
Well, didn't it also, you weren't wearing the ring at the time, but even more recently, last week, you woke up to see a figure leaning over you.
Oh, yeah, that happens quite often.
But, yeah.
I don't take no notice of them. I tell them to buzz off.
Well, maybe it's a situation where you were wearing the ring and the figure that you saw was outside on the street because maybe the ring was protecting you and not allowing it in.
Yeah, could be. I don't know because I've had these. Last week as well, there were the eyes in the darkness, the two eyes. Half a face, just half a face, or just to the nose, the eyes and the colour of the skin was very, very grey colour. And the eyes were blue, but instead of having a black ring around the iris, they had white rings. That was last week as well.
Interesting.
And that came to me through the darkness. because that's the one I turned around and said, what do you want? I didn't. Normally I would turn around and say, go away, very unpolitely. It would end with the word off. But this particular day I said, what do you want? And it just disappeared. So I don't know. Sorry about that, Don.
No problem.
Do you think this ring has got something then?
Sure.
Yes?
I think it does, but I think probably the activating power is yourself.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, to use a very crass metaphor, obviously this cell phone I'm holding in my hand can do a lot of things, but not unless I turn it on and do certain things to make it do all of its wonders.
It's like any other type of tool. Tool just sitting there is just an object, unless it's picked up and used either physically or even like our guest 2 weeks ago when we were talking with Carrie Greenway about crystals. Crystals and people who work with them, the crystals themselves don't do anything. It's when the person or it comes in contact with a form of energy that the crystals can vibrate and can be used as a tool. But of themselves, they don't have the power, which I feel is the way with most objects. They might have an energy about them, but again, to be used properly, it needs someone, using that tool.
Okay. Right, so I'm more than likely the key to this ring, and whoever wore it before me and whoever wore it before him was also the key. Mm-hmm. And the ring has absorbed the energy from whoever the owners were that treasured it and looked after it.
Well,
and it informed you who to give it to when you're done with it.
Yeah, I'm leaving it to Mark in my
yeah,
will.
What the hell am I going to do with it?
Look after it. Look after it.
Yeah. Gee, thanks.
Yeah. But, it's shown me previous owners as well. I saw it with a man. Never mind. I'm taking over the show. Sorry about this, Don. Can we go back to your book?
Yes, absolutely.
Well,
but I'm enjoying every moment. You are both delightful people.
Oh, don't trust that. I can be very naughty.
Yeah, wait till we really get going, especially when she and I are taking the mickey out of each other. Now, again, we were talking about energy, and you talk about vampire energy and magic. Now, the terms energy and magic, to me, seem interchangeable, because energy in itself, there are all different forms of energy, and there's so much energy that we don't understand. Who was it? Was it Arthur C. Clarke? And I'm paraphrasing here, made mention that any advanced technology would be, likened to magic, to like somebody who is not advanced. Same thing with using energy and the types of energy manipulation that a lot of people who work within the occult or in other practices use. Now, you talk about vampire energy. I know in Wiccan and witchcraft, they manipulate the same types of energies, whether natural, spiritual energies as well. And you also mentioned in the synopsis for your book that the vampire is like a shaman who's skilled in gathering and using and storing energy for magical power and liberation. I personally have studied shamanism and studied being a shamanic practitioner at one point. So I kind of understand, connecting with these other spiritual types of energies in order to manipulate for a certain outcome.
Well, magic is the art of magic. People are oftentimes confused because they're confused by the symbol system or the metaphors used to describe it. And so they can then lose track of the fact that magic originates in the mind and most generally will have an effect either in the mind it originated in or in the minds of people who can receive its symbol. Now, the grosser the magic, the broader the scale, the more people can be manipulated. Most of what we call, say, advertising in the world, certainly any earlier thinker, if you watched some late Stone Age shaman look at that, he would, of course, immediately recognize that as magic. You know, the introduction of certain images and songs that then go and live in other people's heads. Think how much of your own brain is leased to other corporations. I can hum the McDonald's song, and you will immediately think of McDonald's.
Yeah.
What an amazing thing, right? They actually have real estate inside your skull.
Jingles. All the, you know, the commercial advertising, everybody can name, you know, hey, I can even think back, going back, good Lord, almost 40 years. You can think of Dr. Pepper. I'm a pepper. You're a pepper. We're a pepper. You know, and the dancing and the song. And yet they haven't used that in 40 something years. And yet it still sticks with you. You know, it's like it has its hooks into you. It has that kind of energy for people. As old as me, anyway.
Oh, well, actually, every human. Consider right now, if I were to show you if I say the word Santa Claus, every one of your listeners has exactly more or less the same picture of the way this guy is dressed, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
He's wearing a outfit of a particular shade of red. Now, is that related to the actual myth of St. Nicholas? No, not at all. Where did it came from? The Coca-Cola Company, in the last part of the 19th century, hired an American cartoonist named Nast to print Santa Claus. And they said, please, 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 have him wear a coat that is exactly the color that is licensed to the Coca-Cola Company. If you go back before, say, 1880, Santa Claus almost always wore green, brown, or white.
Yeah.
But one advertising campaign, and Coca-Cola took over Santa Claus. An amazing piece of psychological engineering.
Yeah, I did not know that.
And what's ironic is Coca-Cola.
I know St. Nicholas looks completely different.
Right. And you know, there's the visage of Old Man Winter and a lot of pagan symbolism where the imagery of Santa Claus came from. But what I find ironic is, you know, when the Coca-Cola Company developed the imagery for Santa Claus, which is now totally ingrained in our culture, you know, that was back when Coca-Cola still had cocaine in their beverage.
Yeah. Up to 1904, it really was the pause that refreshes.
Oh, good Lord. So with this type of imagery and energy, you're talking about manipulating people. Now they do it through advertising, but how can someone who has studied or gone through like your processes that you're sharing of awakening and using this type of energy, what type of other types of manipulation can they do with other people? Is it making somebody like do something that they wouldn't normally do, or is like a form of hypnosis, or is it more of like, you know, nudging someone in a certain direction?
Well, you can do both, right? Because it all depends on the effort you're willing to expend, and this, of course, then raises all sorts of ethical issues. I'll give you two very simple examples. Now, the vampire uses anything that works. It's always going to be a matter of practicality. It's a very pragmatic approach. Now, I will share you one of the methods that comes from an unlikely source. In this case, Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin had a critical enemy who would fight him all the time in the press. attacked him left and right, made fun of his thinking, opposed every political move he was making in Philadelphia. Now, someone of a lesser mind than Benjamin Franklin would simply confront this huge source of energy. But Franklin made a completely vampiric choice. He was like, well, what if this huge source of energy worked for me? How can I do this? His method was simple. He wrote a short letter to the person saying, I really enjoy your writing. You're clearly very bright. I know you have a large library. Do you have a certain volume? Because I would like to borrow it. The gentleman, highly perplexed at receiving this from Franklin, but certainly flattered, as we would all be, immediately sent the book over to Mr. Franklin. Franklin didn't care. He already had a copy. But he held on to this guy's copy for a while and returned it, because he knew, long before we even had the words cognitive dissonance in English, that the man would begin to wonder, well, why did I do this thing for Benjamin? I must be his friend. My actions are different than what I think they are. And he became one of Franklin's supporters. The vampire, in any level, whether using magical energy, sexual energy, physical energy, wants to have people aligned with them. Now, we see that, of course, in the archetype, right? How does Dracula get all the things done in Britain before he even arrives? Well, he gets Renfield to do them. And it's very important to have people who will help you out. And to do that, you have to control their psyche to a certain extent.
Is that what you would refer to as a servitor?
Oh, they can be, that would make it, makes them into a human servitor. Now, to do that, you have to have ethics. When is that permissible to do? When is that wrong to do? Am I treating these people the way I should be treating them? And in some ways, of course, that works pretty well in a capitalist society like we have in the U.S. because everybody's a servitor of somebody.
You're mine, Mark.
Right, to a certain extent. What does Mark do? Mark spreads your word. Mark edits these wonderful broadcasts you do. He has increased your standing in the world. But it's a reciprocal relationship. You have done things for Mark. You've increased his fame. You've increased the circle of people he knows because it's deeply important to him to know interesting people all around the world. Both of you have an energetic exchange going on every time you interact.
That's true, isn't it?
Very
Mark?
Perceptive.
How often have we said that?
Yep.
Mm.
Don, you're
not that I've made you more famous. I haven't said that. We haven't said that.
No.
But it's like this. There's this energy cord attached to each of us. You know, we kind of know what we're doing, what we're thinking, and all sorts of things. And Mark's getting a lot of activity there at the moment. So, yeah.
Now,
that's very interesting.
What?
Now,
no, go ahead, Don.
How often? I'm sorry, what?
No, go ahead, Don. Go ahead.
Consider how often you've actually seen some of your own vampiric energy working, even though you would not perhaps have called it that. How many times in your life you're in some large gathering, you're in an airport, you're being seated next to someone on the bus, and amazingly against the odds, this person is in some way the person you need to meet, the authority on the subject you're seeking to research, the owner of something you want to find out about. You can actually tell that in your own lives you've had that moment. And if you start to examine your own life, if you think back, how did I meet so-and-so, you'll notice the mood you had before then. You will have actually have felt the vampiric essence in you that reaches out into a crowd and says, that person, I need to be next to them. Or perhaps they, having a similar experience, chose you.
You know,
and you found that.
So, in fact, really, we've all got this ability. We all got this vampire energy that we're able to use.
Well,
you have it as a simple fact, but the fact you're alive and moving and human, although some people have a lot more of it than others.
But then there's also the energy vampire, and you know what, Irene? It's you as Don was just talking about, people that you feel attracted to, you feel you need to be a part of. I feel that there's
the opposite as well.
Well, there's the ones of the predatory nature that are using your energy or trying to take your energy for their own. You know, your former business associate.
Yeah.
You know, I think is a perfect example of that. He was sucking you dry, trying to use your energy to increase his own, you know, fame, fortune, whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
And now you get down to the heart of it. When we have exchanges with people, are these exchanges that both sides walk away empowered from? Or is there one partner that's always getting a lot more of everything else?
Yeah.
And then you have to say, again, for various reasons of ethics or self-preservation, I'm not going to associate with this or that parasitical being.
Yeah, well, we finally had to get down to that, didn't we?
Sorry, Mark. I've come across people in the past where as soon as they've walked in the door, I've moved away from them and not understood why I don't want to be close to them. But I've somehow sensed something from them. Are these vampires as well?
Well, they're not vampires in the sense I'm writing about. They're simple psychic vampires. They're people who, because of their great need in their lives, and usually it's because of some trauma they've been through, are just sucking energy from anywhere and anyone.
Yeah.
The thing is, you also notice they never get anywhere in their lives.
Yeah.
They never become greatly successful. They have zero charisma, but there they are.
I was going to say this earlier when we first started talking about it. There's this brilliant show on FX. It's a series based on a movie that I can't pronounce his name, that Australian director, called What We Do in the Shadows. Have you seen it?
I have indeed, and I think it's quite delightful. In fact, it's pretty much a number one show among all the members of the Order of the Vampire in the Temple of Set.
Well, because it's so hysterical, but the one character that's different from the movie version is I forget what his name is, but he's the energy vampire, and he's just this very boring, unassuming guy who, whenever he walks into a room, he just sucks the energy out of everybody. And he's living, of course, with these real vampires. But I just thought that was a great kind of an inside joke about those types of people who do that for real. You know, they'll suck the energy out of a person or out of a room. And yet they don't really, you're right, they don't really go anywhere like this character in this show. But yeah, I love the show. I find it hysterical.
It's on there.
No, the show has a great deal of interest because it plays, in addition to just being really funny, which is the best reason to watch it, it plays with so many of the archetypes. Why do we find, why are these things developed the way they've developed? You have the seductive vampire, you have the terribly disfigured Nosferatu type figure that shows up for a season. All the elements of these myths, it's just odd that they resonate so well with the people that consume them. Now, if you looked at vampires in folklore, before Bram Stoker, before Dr. John Polidori, vampires were really awful. They smell bad, they were bloated, they were full of blood, they were usually extremely hairy. Nobody was thinking, wow, I want to take that to bed with me. But Bram Stoker, who was writing about his boss, that he had a strong love-hate relationship with, creates this perfect figure. Dracula is immensely erotic, and yet also cold, sadistic, someone you just really don't want to see. And there's a lot to be said for the fact that Stoker, who had tried to make a living as a novelist, made so much more money with Dracula than he did with any of the other novels. In fact, if he'd written nothing else, that would be it.
Yep, and that's the only book that's the only book he's remembered for, really, in this day and age.
Right. And even his great grandnephew, who lives in the United States, Darcy Stoker, the guy makes his living basically being a relative of Stoker and selling vampire merchandise and vampire memorabilia.
See, what's interesting with Stoker's version is that he did, and he's the one who took a lot of the Romanian history with Vlad Tepes as Dracula, which means son of the dragon. His father was known as Dracul, which was dragon, and he was bloodthirsty, being the impaling his enemies when fighting the Turkish Empire, and he used all that history to bring in as the basis of the story, making him a real vampire. The Francis Ford Coppola version that came out in the late 80s, early 90s, which was absolutely batshit insane. I'm sorry I had to say it like that. That movie, he must have been doing a lot of drugs when he was doing that movie, but it was still more faithful to the original story. Because there's all the myths that vampires can't be out in daylight, or they burn to a crisp, like the Anne Rice novels have them do, or whatnot, and or I don't know. It's just a lot of the different lore, and again, really ramping up the eroticism and the sexual aspects of it. Now, speaking of that, you do mention, and you talk about in your book about different types of magic practices, which would include money magic and sex magic. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Well, sure. One of the things that is going to be fundamental toward vampiric magic is working with desire. Now, for human beings, there are different approaches to desire. The Buddha tells us desire is a cross of suffering, and he's correct, it is. Therefore, we should eliminate desire. The vampire will tell us something different. Desire is the fulcrum by which you work on yourself. You accept both the pleasures of anything that you're able to work into your lives and the suffering it takes to get there. Now, sex is the best source of vampiric energy because it's such a primally important part of everyone's psyche. And it's so deeply part of growing up and being an adolescent. As you began to form your personality, as you get beyond that personality that formed under mama and dad, then sex is also there. It's this huge fire. And it does amazing things. I'll give you a couple of easy-to-follow magical techniques. Here's one. Think of the time in your life when you were the most sexually active. You don't have to tell me about it. Just remember when it was. You can take anything else that was part of your life then, the music, the clothes, the car you drove, bring those into your life now, and you will feel rejuvenated immediately. That's why you can see really old people dancing to the oldies. That's a form of sex magic you don't think of, but it's because it imprinted on your mind when you really wanted sex. Of course, doing certain magical actions during sex is a very powerful technique. Now, in the West, there have been basically two early theorists, and I talk about them in the book. One was Pascal Beverly Randolph, who invented heterosexual sex magic in its current form. You'll see that taught in a lot of occult orders, such as the Ordo Templi Orientalis. But they'll tell you it's Tantra. It came from the East. No, it didn't. Eastern stuff looks different. It came from one guy. He was American. He was a black American when black Americans were not an empowered group. Homosexual magic largely comes from Aleister Crowley. Now, Crowley had a huge, transformative moment. When he was divorcing his first wife, he was touring North Africa with a Jewish poet that he was very attracted to, Victor Newberg. Now, up to the tour in North Africa, Crowley was very aware of his homosexual tendencies, but he was embarrassed by them. He felt it wasn't manly. Hey, there's something wrong with me. Yet one day, during a magical working, a very complicated working using the Enochian keys, Crowley had Victor Newberg fuck him. Suddenly, at this moment there on a hill in North Africa, as he is screaming words in Enochian that Dr. John Dee had written down, he discovered powerful emotion equals magic, and sex will give you the most powerful emotions. Crowley came down from the mountain just like Moses and proclaimed his law. Now, this is still a huge and kind of forbidden topic for various reasons, because sex is a forbidden topic in our society. Oddly, though, getting back to an earlier thing we talked about, people who then use the images of sex can manipulate the psyches of others. Next time you see an ad for a car, you will notice one of two things. Either the driver is a gorgeous woman who then later in the ad interacts with other gorgeous men and women, or it's a gorgeous man who has at least two gorgeous women in the back seat. Now, that produces this deep notion that if you go and buy this car, these men or women come with it in some strange fashion. Maybe it's a part of the lease I never signed. But these manipulate things. Now, here's the great key to magic. Anything that manipulates you, anything that excites you, can be used magically. Money, of course, is this thing we have a strange and bizarre fascination with. It is unlike any other human need. For example, if I eat a beautiful roast turkey dinner, I do not walk away from the table and think, I want another roast turkey dinner right now. If I make $1,000 in a deal, I am already thinking before the day is over, how do I make my next 1,000 or 10,000 or 1,000,000, or in the case of people like Donald Trump, billion. Mm-hmm. Money is very powerful. I'll tell you a money magic secret that works every time. This is very powerful.
It's all to do with the emotion, the high emotion, the pleasure of it.
Emotions that lead to pleasurable things are always magical. That is as much a piece of becoming aware of your spirit as anything you become aware of through singing devotional hymns. Mm-hmm. This is your physical body becomes aware of your energetic body.
Interesting.
No, I've learned something. I have learned something, and I'm not going to go and do sex to get it either.
Well, anything that you need to do, it doesn't necessarily even have to be sex with someone else. Mm. It doesn't even have to be sex with yourself. It just has to be strong desire.
Would that equate to lust?
It does equate with lust, right? It's one of the things that the church warns us against. Now, I don't mean that you should ever, with your lustful ways, impose your will on another, because that's distasteful. You're not allowing them to become the selves they may become. But why should lust itself be a sin? Why should, for example, if you say that sort of lust is bad, even in people that don't say maybe act on that lust. Now, obviously, there's certain forms. Any form that takes away the will of the other is not permissible. But why should lust itself be a sin?
Well,
why should anger be a sin?
Well, I think you mentioned that with, when you're talking about the church, anything having to do with pleasure or self-gratification, they always make it as a sin because you shouldn't feel good about anything other than God. And if you're thinking of what they call sins of the flesh, it's a way of controlling you, trying to stamp out or control your natural human tendencies. Now, there's also the other side of the coin. It's like those who take something too far. Now, you talk about lust, and you may lust after something and not act on it, or you feel that attraction, unrequited love, lust, or something like that. I mean, heck, in high school, I had crushes on several different girls, and who wouldn't give me the time of day. And was there a bit of lust there? Heck yeah, I was a young teenage boy, but would I do anything about it? No, because they didn't want anything to do with me. So it was what it was. And then you learn to move on. But there are people who take it to extremes, people who perform rape, or they use other people physically, whether it's, sexually, or whether it's other types or forms of physical or even mental or emotional abuse.
Now, one should always be aware that if you're going to say that your ethic is, I want to evolve as an immortal self, then you always have the clear ethic, I can't do anything that is going to remove that self's possibility for evolution. You can't say, well, I am superior in some way, I can go take that. No, wrong, you have failed. There are people that will have this. And there's the other big issue when dealing with sources of pleasure. The magician, the vampire, must do a couple of things. One, you should have high goals, because you should have that struggle of getting it as well as the culmination of receiving it. But two, you must always think of these things: lust, greed for money, greed for whatever. These are fulcrums to work on the self. They are not the objects of the self. Think how terrible it would be if you spent a human lifetime always thinking about money, and that money itself was your great, summum bonum. Then after you die, what little tiny soul you may have will have exactly one interest, which will be money. Maybe you'll just become some kind of transparent wraith that haunts a bank vault or something. But there's not a universe filled with wonder open to you.
What's the old adage? You can't take it with you.
You can't. Well, unless you're Egyptian. They were pretty good at that.
Yeah, well, hoarding it in a tomb, but whether they actually took it with them, that remains to be seen.
What about the desire to destroy somebody? Does this come into it?
You have a very important question. Can you do magic that is destructive? And the answer is yes, of course, but why are you doing it? For example, in my home, because I'm an American and we all keep guns, even though I'm liberal, I have a gun. I have a gun for defense of the home.
Yeah.
I have never, in 60 years of my life, pointed a gun at a human being. I have no desire to ever do that. But yes, I have the gun. I clean it regularly. I occasionally go down to the range and shoot it. Why? Because one of the things that I take as an absolute, someone comes in my home, particularly if they mean harm for my wife, I will use that.
Yeah.
So I will never say you can't do destructive magic. I would just say, why are you doing destructive magic? Because if it's just because you hate someone, that's stupid. Hatred is a way of feeding energy to someone else. That's why you can have politicians who can be loved by half the country and then hated by the other half, who are then extremely powerful, because everybody is thinking about them all the time. And the wackier they get, the more power they often have.
Yeah.
Good analogies, especially if, and again, it goes back to what I was originally talking about earlier in the program, tools like gun or gun ownership. I know I have friends who are just so anti-gun that, you just mentioned the word gun and they just throw a hissy fit. And as someone who's grown up with them and taught right by them, by my father, and treating it with respect, it's a tool like anything else. And a tool in the hand of the wrong person can be used for destruction. Luckily, I think most people have that respect for it or are taught right on how to use these types of tools. And
yeah, I mean, it all comes down to that every human, regardless of their philosophical, religious, political background, should be taught respect for life. And then after that, respect for freedom. The other things, the things of magic or faith or whatever, in their adult years, if they're balanced, then they can take those things up.
Yep. The part of the problem, I think this is one of the reasons why we're seeing a lot of what we're seeing going on right now, especially in this country, in regards to the violence, is there is no regard. People are acting out. It's one thing to protest. It's another thing to just destroy and burn and hurt other people and get off on it. And a lot of these younger people don't have that respect for life. And you could blame it, you could finger point on a number of different things, anything from, the home upbringing to, violent video games. And, and some of that has some merit. I mean, when you have a game like Grand Theft Auto, where, the goal is to run over people and kill people and you gain points for it, or, killing hookers or something. I mean, it's just, and that's entertainment, and that's what these kids grow up with. And then acting out in real life. And again, that's just a very minuscule part of it. I'm not blaming video games for all the problems that are out there, because God knows I played my share of violent video games. But, it depends on the person. And again, it's, as we talked about earlier, the form of energy manipulation that is going on in our society. We mentioned commercials, but you know what? Video games, movies, all of these things all of the social media all act as form of energy and manipulation of people.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing to think of in kind of big general terms, and I'm getting by the way, and soon I have to leave this lovely forum, so I'm just going to try to sum up that.
Okay.
If the energy is taken out of you, if you're giving energy to whatever, by the show you're watching, your time on Facebook, the drugs you're buying, think where the energy is going. Is that where your energy wants to go? Or is it being taken from you? And that can change a lot of things just on a day-to-day basis. Before I leave, I'm going to do a very writerly thing. I also want to mention that in addition to this book, which is about coming out now, The Energy Magick of the Vampyre, which is from Inner Traditions, and I think in America it's going to be out the 25th of May, and I think in the UK, the beginning of June. I also want to point out, I did have a collection of horror fiction that came out last year, Building Strange Temples from Ramble House. So if you don't want to bite into the dark stuff in the how to do it section, but just be amused by it, you might go look at my horror fiction. All right, guys, what last question can I answer?
I'm going to definitely be buying some of these books. I've learned a lot tonight. I've been sitting here. honestly, I have been sitting here absolutely gobsmacked at what you're saying because a lot of it resonates with me and I can understand it.
And
I've learned, and I've also learned a lot.
And I'll second that, too. I think this is, again, one of the reasons why I enjoy doing these shows and talking to people like yourselves with these types of experiences, because it does open up new ideas, helps people to think and think outside the box and look at our world and reality from different perspectives.
One thing I will ask, how can you protect yourself from somebody that is trying to take your energy?
Well, if you can't simply walk away, one of the simplest things to do, that's very easy, this is just does not require a lot of training, is in your own mind, think of a well that is drying up, or a river that is ceasing to flow, or just a fountain being turned off. Just become inside yourself not a source to others. And you will notice very abruptly they will look slightly confused and then suddenly have no interest in you.
I'm going to try that.
Fantastic.
I'm definitely going to try that one. Okay, Don, thank you very much.
And yes, Don, thank you for coming on. And again, for our listeners, the book is titled Energy Magick of the Vampyre, Secret Techniques for Personal Power and Manifestation, written by Don Webb and published by Inner Traditions, which I want to give a shout out to because we have a great relationship with the folks over at Inner Traditions, and they recommended you being on our show. So wanted to thank them. And thank you, Don, and for coming on. We really had a great time talking with you.
What was the date of the book?
And
sorry, Don, what was the date
I wish
again?
you well. Pardon?
I told you we'd talk over each other. What date is the book being released again?
I believe in the United Kingdom it's June the 1st. In America, it's going to be May 25th. And, of course, you can pre-order it now on Amazon and other book suppliers.
Yeah, I was going to ask if it could be pre-ordered. Okay.
Well, Don, again, thank you very much for coming on, and we'll hope you have a good night, and we'll be talking with you soon.
Okay, thank you, Don.
I wish the best for you as well. Thank you so much for having me.
Don, if you pick up anything from the ring, let me know.
All right.
Any feelings, any emotions, anything at all?
I'll spend a little time tonight meditating on the image that Mark sent me.
Yeah, I also sent you a link to the Facebook page, which has a lot more pictures and some of Irene's experiences as well.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
All
right, Don. Well, thank you, and have a great evening.
Okay, Don.
Bye.
Bye.
Well,
that was very, very
amazing.
Interesting.
That was amazing because I learned so much from it.
And you know what? It's like, I liken it to like when we talk with Eric Verner, although we haven't had Eric on in a long time. So maybe we should bring him back on. Again. Yeah. He's always a great guest and very misunderstood. And I think that Don's book and what he participates in is also a very misunderstood section of the occult. And a lot of people would look at it, especially, from a religious point of view, as being satanic or very evil or dark. But I think it's just another version of a lot of different cultures out there that learn to work with energy, manipulate energy, and coming from a particular viewpoint or social structure.
Well, I've often thought that, about people draining energy. I do know that happens, but also about the folklore of vampires. This is what everyone thinks. It's either the folklore or the films, isn't it?
Yeah.
Every country has its folklore vampires. It's mythology. This is the words. I can't get these long words out, Mark.
The mythology.
Mythological vampires.
Yes.
Ghost fairies. That drain energy from you.
Or the undead, from vampires to zombies to, whatever. Yeah. It's the otherworldly creatures that are not alive as we think of them. And as you mentioned, the fae, the, trolls, or anything of a mystical nature. But again, it goes back to, and, I'll be talking a lot about this on my new show here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network, Astral Perceptions. Just did the premiere episode last week. I'll have another new episode coming out this week. And, a lot of it will be talking.
That's a dig, people. That's a dig.
That was
with Mark Johnson.
That was my plug.
That's your plug.
But you know what? I'll be talking a lot about energy because I think, everything is energy. Even astrophysicists, understand that we're all made out of energy. Both the physical matter, which is part of energy, spiritual energy as well.
Yeah. So it's very interesting. Interesting.
Is the ring still making you feel naughty?
No. How do you feel?
I'm feeling a little bit better now. Did you take him off? You took him off, didn't you?
I put him back on. I was playing with him earlier on, stroking his head and his face and one thing or another.
Yeah, there was at one point, this has been a weird night because I was feeling the energy really heavy tonight when we first started the show. I had a severe tingling on my scalp, which usually tells me I'm picking up on some sensations. And also feeling a little... I don't know if naughty is the right word, just, a little more energetic and mischievous feeling tonight.
Yeah, that's unusual for you, isn't it?
Yeah, usually I'm as boring as whale crap. So
I've just taken him off my finger again, and I'm sitting looking at him, and, well, it's the ring, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, we will be working on our book.
You will be working on our book.
Well, you'll be working on it too. I mean, they're your experiences. You own the ring.
Yeah, and don't forget, I've got the Psychic Spy coming out again.
That's true.
Yeah,
a Psychic Spy, Operation Paris.
Operation Paris, yeah. My new book should release it in about a month's time, I think, Mark.
Hopefully sometime in June. Beginning of June.
Psychic Spy, Operation Paris.
Yes.
There's sex in that one as well.
Yep. Well, don't forget Irene's other books, My Life Among the Spirits and Where Demons Dwell.
And what was the other one?
A Psychic Spy. Recruited.
Oh, yeah. Psychic Spy Recruited, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that was a good...
That's about a month.
Yep. We'll look forward to it.
Huh?
I'm looking forward to it.
Do you know something? I was watching when is it? It was some time ago. I was watching a video on YouTube about vampires, actually, but folklore vampires. It was some time ago. And Japan has got two.
Yeah, there's...
One's a neck-stretching vampire, and they're normally women. And this one, I think it was a Roko Kubi or something or other. She stretches at night when she goes after whoever she's going for. She stretches her neck long like a giraffe. Her head lifts off. It's like a giraffe's neck. And then she goes and does whatever she does.
I think they focused on that on a few Japanese horror movies. I think The Ring is something very similar to that. How ironic, The Ring.
The Ring.
The Ring movie, not The Ring.
Oh, The Ring. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, fantastic show. So I think we're going to wrap up, but I want to thank everyone for listening to another edition of the Paranormal UK radio show, the flagship show here on the Paranormal UK radio network /station.
Yeah, get it in,
I have
station.
to get that in, station. You know, it is for anyone. If you can always catch our shows on demand on our podcast channels, available on Apple Podcasts, Samsung Podcast, Google Podcasts, yeah, you name it.
Amazon, iTunes,
iHeartRadio,
TalkStream Live,
yes, plus also our streaming radio station available on our website at paukradio.com, also streaming on TuneIn Radio and the Paranormal Radio app that you can download on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
So you can catch us everywhere, people.
Yeah. No use, no excuse of missing a show.
No, you can't hide.
No excuse whatsoever. And don't forget Astral Perceptions next week with Mark Johnson.
Actually, this week.
This week.
Yep. Thursdays. I'm shooting for Thursdays weekly. We'll see how that goes.
Oh, I listened to it today. I listened to last week's one.
And did it absolutely suck?
No, it was very good.
Okay.
But I wanted to know who this person was that gives you intelligent messages.
Well, I would tell you, but then I'd have to kill you.
Must be a spy.
Yeah, an otherworldly spy.
All right.
Okay. Well, Irene, you have a great evening.
And you.
And
good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody. We'll see you all next week. Have a good. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.